LouieTeeNetwork. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. You can almost set your watch to this. It's becoming clockwork. And, you know, it's something that now, it started as a running joke and it was ha-ha, funny. Now it's like, yo, this is a real thing. Every time I put out a video, they sign a player directly after, right? So Washington adds more offensive line depth, specifically interior offensive line depth, by signing former Dolphins third-round pick in Houston Texans contributor from last season, Michael Deiter, a center out of Wisconsin. Dolphins drafted him back in the third round of the 2019 NFL Draft. Started almost the entire rookie season, was then benched in his second season in favor of Ted Karras, who the Dolphins brought over from New England. Then after that, he got an opportunity. His third season got benched again, and then ultimately the Dolphins went out and got Connor Williams and signed him in free agency from Dallas. And so he hit the streets, ended up in Houston last year, and was really good for the Texans. Right? They had a lot of injuries up front, and he stepped up in a major way when those injuries started to, take effect. And he's proven over the life of his career, he's established himself as a competent backup on the interior of the offensive line, specifically at center. But, he can play the guard positions as well in a pinch if you need him to. But he's a center by trade. And for me, what this signing does is it solidifies the center position, but it drives home another point, right? A different point. And I was so way off base. And I told you, when I'm the first to be right about something, or if I'm right about something, I'll be the first to tell you about it. But when I'm wrong, I'll also be the first to tell you about it. I was flat out wrong about, and again, I don't know. He may ultimately be a good player, but Ricky Stromberg, my take was, hey, let's just give Ricky a shot and let's see what he does. And their thought process was, hell no. As a matter of fact, let's put Ricky all the way at third on the center depth chart. Matter of fact, Ricky might have a better shot at getting snaps at guard than he does at center. So this move essentially puts Ricky Stromberg, if we were looking at him as a potential option at center, this puts him all the way to the back of the center line, and it puts him in a position to compete for left guard along with, guys that they've brought in here. But Nick Allegretti is the guy that we think is going to ultimately be the left guard starting here for this team. But I guess Ricky Stromberg and Chris Paul and all of those other guys that we have on the interior still are going to compete for an opportunity to be at left guard. Stromberg probably isn't the answer at center here, is what they're telling us. And again, this should not come as any surprise. I just figured, because they spent a third-round pick on him, but they didn't. This group didn't spend a third round. This group could have had a fifth or sixth-round pick on Ricky Stromberg in terms of a grade. And Washington overdrafted him last year, just like they overdrafted Braden Daniels. I don't think Braden Daniels was worthy of a day 2 pick. They spent a day 3, or early day 3 pick on him. I wouldn't have spent an early day 3 pick. It would have been a late day 3 pick on Braden Daniels. He was, to me, a project, a 6th or 7th round type pick. They select him in the 4th round. So they could feel the same way about Braden Daniels that, they do potentially Ricky Stromberg. They've shown us that they don't trust Ricky Stromberg, and they're not even going to attempt to give him an opportunity to prove that he can play center here. You sign Biadasz to a 3-year deal, which means he's the starter. And now you sign Michael Deiter. And again, Deiter isn't guaranteed anything. He's not necessarily going to come in here and earn a roster spot. He could be a guy that they bring in, think he can compete for roster depth, and then Ricky Stromberg outperforms him in camp and ends up being the backup center here. That's how it could go, which you're throwing more bodies at the interior offensive line. This, again, I think takes another step in the direction of don't look for offensive line interior depth in the draft. Don't look for them to select a guy in the 5th round when they have 2 selections. at interior offensive line. I think this kind of continues to push that narrative as well. I didn't expect any offensive line help on the interior after all the work that had been done in free agency. And with all the guys that were coming back from last year's team, including Sam Cosmi and Chris Paul and Ricky Stromberg and Braden Daniels and all those guys that they were going to bring back just because they were under contract, I already didn't expect any really, more work to be done there. They didn't cut Andrew Wiley, so I'm thinking they still see value in him as a potential guard. I can't imagine, and we have just assumed, right? And this is not smart to do on our part. I am guilty as charged because I've been the one out in front of this. There's no way Andrew Wiley is starting at right tackle. They're not blind, right? They watched what we watched last year. They know he's not a starting right tackle. I have to be confident in their ability to assess that. And I'm just going to continue to assume that we have 2 tackle spots open right now and that they're going to draft one for sure. And somebody on the roster currently is probably going to end up starting at right tackle. And that guy's name isn't Andrew Wiley. That's my assumption right now. And again, that guy could not be on the roster and he could get released after the draft and Washington could then pounce and find their starting right tackle. Again, we'll see what happens. Washington's got plenty of cap space, right? As of right now, they have the second most cap space left in the NFL. So they got plenty of money to maneuver should they decide that a guy comes free and they want to go ahead and address the tackle position, or if they want to trade for a player after the draft. All of those things are still in play. I don't see them giving up any draft capital. However, I think you can get by with Cornelius Lucas. I've already said that. They re-signed him and a rookie tackle if need be. We'll see what happens. But this signing of Michael Deiter, to me, confirms that there will be no activity in the draft for Washington on the interior offensive line. From guard to guard, they feel comfortable with what they've done already. Unless a guy falls into their lap and they just can't believe it, 3rd round, 5th round, somewhere in that neighborhood, okay, you could see something happen there. But barring some kind of oh my God moment by the staff where this guy's too talented to let him go, I don't see them addressing, interior offensive line in the draft. And again, to the bigger point for me is Ricky Stromberg is not in the running right now as it stands to be a guy that they rely on in any capacity at center on this roster as of right now. And as I've said already, and I gave you a scenario in which Deiter's brought to camp with, Stromberg. They're competing for second center on this team, backup center. And Stromberg just wins out, right? But they're not giving Ricky Stromberg anything. And I wouldn't have it any other way, right? I would have given him an opportunity. But again, when you're drafting a rookie quarterback and your line is going to be in flux, you've got a new offense, you probably want a veteran presence, a calming influence there, which is why I think they brought in Michael Deiter, because they don't want to go from Tyler Biadasz to then a rookie if something were to occur with Biadasz. They would like to probably transition to Michael Deiter, another veteran that can come in, stabilize that center position, make sure everybody's lined up, make sure that center is comfortable. And in worst case scenario, if we have one of those catastrophes like we've had over the last few years, then you could go to, say, a Ricky Stromberg if need be. Hell, even Nick Allegretti could go to center in a pinch if you had to do that. But again, if he's starting at left guard, you don't upset that position to try to patch up another one. You leave him at guard, and you would just probably insert a guy like Ricky Stromberg, should he be on the roster. But again, more depth on the interior of the offensive line. And to me, this is a statement that Ricky Stromberg probably won't be anywhere near the top of the depth chart at center when it's all said and done. He won't be first, definitely, with the signing of Tyler Biadasz. He probably won't even be second with the signing of Michael Deiter, who I do think they signed to be on this roster when the final 53 comes out. Again, if he's healthy, I see Michael Deiter as a guy making this football team as a veteran player. More likely than not, we don't know the particulars of the contract. I told you, all of these deals that you see in week 2, now we're into week 3 of free agency, low-level signings. I'm assuming another 1 year deal similar to the one he signed with the Houston Texans last year. He was very valuable for the Texans last year. And keep in mind, here's another thing that you need to think about. He was the center for rookie C.J. Stroud in a big season. He started 10 games last year for the Texans, did Michael Deiter. And that goes a long way in a team looking at what Michael Deiter can provide. He was able to help a young quarterback last year. In a pinch, he can do the same this year, which is why I think he's going to end up on this roster, which pushes Ricky Stromberg either the third string center or you're over there fighting at the guard position at left guard for that one opening, and then maybe a backup position, which would be ideal because you want your backup guard and center on game day to be able to play both guard and center, right? Both guard spots and center. Ricky Stromberg could do that, so he's an ideal backup candidate should he not start to be active on game days. But again, we will see. At the end of the day, Washington adds another offensive lineman. Again, on the interior, I think we're done with interior offensive linemen in terms of anything you might think they're going to do via the draft. Don't see that happening. I didn't see it happening before this signing. I definitely don't see it now after it. And so I think this makes me feel like Ricky Stromberg's being viewed more so as a guard than anything else. But again, we will see. He played a lot of snaps at guard last year anyway. So maybe they're just continuing what Rivera and company were trying to do, which was convert him over to more so of a guard than a center last season. But in any event, Michael Deiter signed to the Commanders on what more likely is going to amount to a 1-year deal. And again, another piece that I feel good about adding in terms of depth on that offensive line. What we don't want to do is find ourselves in that same pinch that we were in 3 years ago, 2 years ago, where you went through this rash of injuries at center and you just didn't have the guys there to really help you get out of that rut. You know, we had a ridiculous amount of injuries. No team should have to go through that many injuries at one position like that. But this gives you another guy, you know, another line of defense, if you will, up front should injuries start to take effect at the center position. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up, take command. What does this signing of Michael Deiter, more depth along the interior offensive line, say to you? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.